Hello, this is Michelle with Artful Possibilities. Thank you for joining me today for this acrylic painting tutorial of my little bluebird on a floral nest. We're going to start by drawing this and we're going to take it one step at a time. I'm using an 8 by 10 inch stretched canvas horizontally. My brushes are going to be a 1 inch flat. These are getting so covered with paint. So I have bright brushes, which are flat brushes. Okay, they're square, they have a nice tip, and I have one that's about a 1/2 inch and one that's about a 1/4 inch. So from numbers, they could vary from like an 8 to a 10, but just go by the size of the bristles. I'm also going to be using a number 6 round with a really nice point. And I have a 0 liner for little tendrils and eyelashes. I also have a round brush. This is an older brush. It's a number 10 round that's a little bit worn out. And that's what I'm going to use to press and pull the petals on the flowers. Also, you will be needing a pencil and a clean paper towel that has been dipped into clean water and squeezed out so it's just damp. All right, so we're going to start by drawing our little bird, and I've done some measurements, and this is a 10 inch long wide canvas, and I actually drew the bird pretty much in the middle. It can be off to the side a little bit if you tip the head, but basically go about 5 inches in and about 2 inches down, and we're going to start our circle. So I made a little line at about the 2 inch mark, a little line at about a 3.5 inch mark, and then another line at a 5 inch mark. Okay, and I'm just going to double check that 5 inch mark. Yes, the end of the bird actually goes to about 5 inches. So let's go ahead and get started with drawing. We're going to draw a circle for the head of the bird. Now remember that you can come back in and erase. I'm just using a number 2 pencil, and it has a pretty soft lead. It's easy to erase. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It's a little bit on the oval side, so you can come back in and round that out. Ovals aren't bad either, so whatever you draw. Now I also have recommended in some other videos that you draw this on paper and then transfer it to your canvas later. So that's another option. Now from the head, we're going to come about, if you were to come down the side, you're below halfway. Just imagine like where a neck would be. And we're going to come down like this, and we're going to draw a body. And we're going to do that on each side, and we want to finish it actually right around that 5 inch mark, which I seem to be missing how I'm drawing this today. But every time you do something freehand, it's going to come out different. So if you wanted to paint several of these and you wanted them to be the same, I do recommend that you make a pattern on a piece of paper and then use some transfer paper to transfer them to the canvas. Alright, so then from this side, right where the head meets the body, I'm going to come out and down and create the wing. So I'm just going to come down like this. And on the other side, I tipped the wing just a little more out, so I'm going to come out and then down. And again, this is all freehand, so if it's a little bit different, no worries. Down and through here, we're going to create the flowers. So all we have to do right now is work on the background. And I did not tell you about my colors. I am using mostly Liquitex Basics acrylics. I have a couple of Artist Loft thrown in there, but the colors are exactly, or you know, pretty much the same. So what I have here is Unbleached Titanium, Burnt Umber, Phthalo Blue, Titanium White, Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue, which is a golden, deep golden, pretty color. I have Quinacridone Magenta. I have Vivid Red Orange. Any bright orange will do. And for the greens, I have my Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, and I also have Light Green Permanent, and another of my favorites is the Light Olive Green. So as we progress, if I add any other colors, I will let you know, and be sure to get it in the description for you. So let's go ahead and start with our background, and I'm going to start with my large flat brush. I'm going to wet it in the water, touch it to my paper towel, and my background is going to be mostly Unbleached Titanium, and I'm going to paint it to the bird. I'm going to be adding little bits of burnt umber into that background also as we go. So right now I'm just going to dip the corner of my brush in, add a little bit. Now this is where our paper towel comes in. We're going to take our damp paper towel and we're going to just wad it up, squeeze, you know, hold it in our hand in pinched, like a pinched fashion, and we're just going to tap up and down. Now, if you want your titanium white to be more solid than that, you can let it dry just a tiny bit. So we'll go ahead and we'll finish. I have some burnt umber in the brush too, but that's actually fine. I'm going to keep grabbing the Unbleached Titanium, and I'm going to grab a little bit of burnt umber and throw it in there. I'm going to go pretty quickly so it doesn't set up, you know, before I get it the way I want it. And I'm just going to come in with this paper towel and tap, tap, tap. And the motion is straight up and down. I'm not smudging or pressing. I'm just going straight up and down. So keep kind of playing with that till you get a texture that you like for the background. It starts to look a little bit like parchment paper. It's a little light right here. I'm actually going to be shading around the bird, so let's go ahead and while that's wet, we can get some burnt umber in here around the bird, and then just kind of tap, tap, tap. All right, I'm going to do that up here. And grab, just as we go, I'm going to grab a little burnt umber, put it around the bird. And then I'm going to tap, tap, tap. If you get a little bit of color in the bird while you're doing this, you can have one of your other brushes, one of your flat ones, just kind of clean and ready to go. And you can just come in like this with a damp brush and kind of swoop that away. So we're going to go around. I like to turn my canvas around as I work. And I'm just going to continue with this background. I'm going to get it on quickly for you. I'm going to keep grabbing a little bit of the burnt umber on one corner of the brush and get that closer to the bird. Tap, tap, tap. You want to come in and do that tapping while the paint is wet. Okay. Continue to go all around. If I put too much paint on the brush, I'll just wipe it like that and kind of blend it on the palette. I need a little more water on my brush. I touched it in the water jar, and I'm going to touch it to my paper towel then, and then come back to the canvas. If it isn't flowing enough, just wet your brush, touch it to your paper towel so you don't carry too much water to your canvas. Okay, get this finished up. You can throw little bits of burnt umber in the background also to give it more texture. Okay, so now I'm going to continue. I have to put this brush in the water. I'm going to continue to pat up and down. You can turn the paper towel to different cleaner areas too. The cleaner the paper towel, it seems like the more paint it lifts up off the canvas. So that's going to be up to you to determine how you want the background to develop. Okay, now while that's wet, that's good. A little bit here in this wing. Little bits of paint inside isn't really a problem, but you can clean it up if you'd like. Okay. I'm going to grab my round brush because right in here I noticed that I didn't get in very deep with my flat brush, so I'm going to just come in and put some burnt umber down in there. It's going to help our little white feathers stand out if we have some brown around our bird like that. Okay. So while this is wet, I'm going to dip here on my palette where I have a little bit of burnt umber, and I'm just going to come in and just grab a little more. I'm just going to come in and put a little bit in and just kind of pounce it into that unbleached titanium. So it's very, very subtle. Just pounce on it till it kind of mixes and blends into your titanium, your unbleached titanium. So it's kind of subtle. Again, totally up to you. If you want a darker background, you know, you can add more. The trick is just to keep tapping that paper towel so you get a blend, okay? So I have a little light area here around the bird. I might want to grab just a little more unbleached titanium. I don't want my canvas to be white for this project. Okay, so while that's wet, I have this paper towel. I'm going to get my index finger into the paper towel like so, dip in my burnt umber paint, touch it on my palette, and I'm with my finger pointing to the outside edge of the canvas, I'm going to go ahead and apply that burnt umber. And the clean edge of the paper towel is actually down on the canvas, so it gives a slight blend. Now actually we're going to have to wait. I was trying to get this done for you in one fell swoop, but because the unbleached titanium is still wet, I'm lifting it. So I'm going to just correct that and leave it alone for a bit, and we'll come back to that in a few moments. Okay. So let's go ahead and start by painting the bird. I'm going to take my 1/4 inch flat brush. Okay. And I'm going to take some titanium white and I'm going to start putting it on the head. And while that's nice and wet, if you touch a little and you bring a little bit of brown into the bird, that's okay. While that's wet, I'm going to take the tiniest bit of phthalo blue and I'm going to start putting it around the edge of the face. And I'm going to turn, again, I always turn as I work on my canvas. So for me, I like to turn it in a way that it's easy for my hand to come in at the angle that I want. So the blue on the brush is toward the outside of the head and the clean end of the brush is toward the middle of the head. And I'm just kind of tapping a little bit and letting some of that blue go into the face. If you want it to look a little bit more like feathers, you can take the tiniest bit of blue on your round brush and just come in and curve the sides of your brush strokes a little bit. So if you paint something round and you want to help give it shape, move your brush in that circular shape and just the motion of the paint, even if you blend a lot of that in by having those curved strokes, it's going to help give it some roundness. So I'm going to come back in with some white. I did keep this bird extremely pastel looking, but you can do whatever you'd like with yours. All right, so I'm going to leave that like that. I kind of like that. And I'm going to I'm going to do the wings next. And there's a reason I want to do that next. It's because I want the belly to come up in front of the wings, meaning like the belly is rounded. So we need to pop it forward from the wings, which are a little bit further back on the body than the front of the belly is. So what I'm going to do is paint each wing. Now my brush is still dirty, so it has a tiny bit of blue in it. And I'm just going to paint in this wing, mostly white with a dirty brush. Now I'm not going up against the belly right now with the white. I'm just getting the white on the wing. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the tiniest bit of phthalo blue and I'm going to place it on the wing near the body. So up against the body is where we're placing our blue. Okay, so that's good. I like that. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to take our white, paint in our wing. Now again, my brush is a little bit dirty. It's going to have just a little bit of blue in it. I'm going to grab a tiny, tiny bit of phthalo blue here off of my palette. And I'm going to place it near the body. Now phthalo blue is going to be a very strong color, so I'm using it in little bits. I'm going to blend that out a little bit. Okay, I'm going to put that brush in the water and I'm going to take that round brush again. And now what I'm going to do is just grab the tiniest bit of this blue and I'm going to start stroking the brush the way I would imagine that these little feathers would be growing on this wing. So I'm going to curve it like around the belly and then come out a little bit. And it's really just mixing the phthalo blue into that white. And the stronger you want it, you can just come in with a little more blue. Okay, so you can make that as light or as dark as you'd like. But we do want the dark color to be around this belly. So we're on the wing, right near the belly to make the darkest line. Okay, same thing on this side. I'm going to grab a little bit of the blue, come in, make some feathery strokes, grab a little white, and just kind of play back and forth with those colors. Okay. It's going to be super cute. All right, so for the belly, same thing. I think I'll just use the round brush, and it's still dirty, still has a tiny bit of blue in it. And I'm just going to come in and start painting it in the white, titanium white, which is your brightest white. That's on your palette. And we're going to paint this whole belly. Oops, I got in the face a little bit. That's okay. Let me just rinse my brush. Whoops. See, I dropped a little drop of water and it's lifted the paint. Until that paint is really dry, it's not completely adhered to the canvas. But we're going to come in and fix all that soon. All right, so there's our basic base coat of the bird. But while that tummy's wet, I'm just going to grab some little bits of the blue. Right here on my palette where it's very, very thin, I'm just grabbing some little bits of blue and I'm making brush strokes. So I want them to be rounded on the sides of the belly, and then in the middle we can kind of just go a little straighter. But I'm going to be adding a little bit of pink there. So I'm not going to make it too blue. We just want to give it some motion, some shape. Okay. All right. Now I do also want to make it a little darker here underneath the head, but I'm leaving a little bit of room there so I can see where the head stops and the belly starts. And I'm just going to pull some of this down. All right. Now I'm going to clean up any edges that I want a little more crisp. around the edge of the wing, we're going to be adding some hairs, so we don't have to worry about that too much. But I'm just going to come in and give it a little bit of a crispness, but it doesn't have to be perfectly straight because we're going to have the cutest little hairs there. Okay, adding a little white. Okay, so that looks cute. Over here on the right side of the belly, I'm going to take a tiny bit of the Quinacridone Magenta and a tiny bit of yellow. Tiny bit. And in here, I'm going to come in and just put a little bit of that peachy pink color on the belly of my bird. You can grab a little bit more of the magenta. I'm using the tiniest bits of paint. Just lightly stroking that onto the bird toward the middle. And I'm going to put a little bit this way, curving the other way. So keep your brush strokes in the shape of the circle. All right, there's a separation here, which is intentional, okay? Between the head and the body, it's intentional right now. All right, so our background should be dry enough that I could show you the paper towel technique around the edges, and then we'll dry all of this so we can get our beak on. All right, I'm back to this paper towel. I'm putting my index finger in it, grabbing some burnt umber, and with the color toward the outside edge of the canvas, I'm just pouncing. And you can, again, make this as dark or as light as you'd like, and come in as far as you'd like. It kind of gives your painting a little bit of a border, creates a frame effect. You can kind of dab it up and down a little bit, so your edge won't be perfect. All right, so we're going to do that all around. I did splash some water. My water jar is pretty close to my work area here, so I've done some splashing, but if that happens to you, I'm just going to leave this here in the video so you can see how I'll fix that. I always leave my little bloopers in so you can see that those things happen to me also, and we can fix just about anything. But you also know now, if you wanted to make a polka dot effect, how dropping some water there would help. I'll have to do a tutorial on that. Okay, we're going to keep going all around. Now, if I want to blend it more, I just kind of lay my finger down so more of that clean area will be on the canvas. You can also change it around and use a cleaner end of your paper towel. The cleaner the paper towel, the more paint it's going to remove when you pounce. And you may end up wanting to come in and adding another layer of that. Trying to hold the canvas so it doesn't make that tapping noise. All right. Paper towels are always handy. You can do some neat techniques with them. So later when it's dry, if you decide you want to add more color, you can do that. Down in here, I'm actually going to leave this darkness because we're going to need a lot of darkness under the flowers later. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that. Okay, so I believe my bird is dry enough that I can draw a beak. So my beak is kind of a lopsided triangle, and the head on my bird is tipped. Yeah, that's dry enough. So I'm going to draw, it's kind of like a triangle with a rounded edge, and it's more narrow on that side than this side. Okay, and while the face is nice and dry, I'm going to go ahead and grab that round brush again. I'm going to paint that beak in with my yellow. And then we'll have to let that dry. I'm going to go right over the pencil line. We're going to be doing a little shading there that will cover that. Now sometimes when you're using yellow like this, it's best to have a base coat of white under it, but our bird is so light that I just did the yellow, and we're going to let that set up. Okay, and in order to make his head look tipped, when we do the eyes, we're going to have one eye lower and one eye higher. Okay. So while that's setting up, let's go ahead and get the hairs on there. So if you have a really nice number 6 round, you can certainly use that for the hairs. If not, you're going to want to grab your smaller brush. So I'm going to grab my smaller brush. I'm going to put my brushes in my glass jar here. And rinse these others. So when you're working with acrylics also, you want to make sure that you put your dirty brushes into water or get them rinsed. It's best not to leave them in there to soak, but get them rinsed. And I'm putting them in another jar on my left because when I'm teaching, I tend to just put the brush down and then I lose track of it. So I'm trying to put them in a glass today. All right. I am going to have to blow dry this after so I can fix those dots. Okay, so what we're going to do is take your small brush. Again, I'm using a 0 liner. I'm going to take some water, put it on the palette near my white paint, take some of the white paint, put it into that water, and make a thinner consistency of paint. It's more like a skim milk or an ink. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit for this and see if you can see the hairs better. Move a couple of things. Okay, here we go. So when I paint the hairs, I want to paint them coming down and out around the head. So let me show you. I'm going to put my brush on the bird's head, and then I'm just going to pull out little tiny hairs, and I'm going to lightly blend them into the bird. Okay. So just some little hairs that come out on that brown color. This is optional. You definitely want to go easy with that and just kind of do some little hairs. Now in the middle, I usually just kind of come straight up, but we're also going to be painting some flowers on the bird's head, so we don't have to worry too much. So now on this side, I'm going to come down this way. I think he just looks so cute and whimsical with these little hairs. He, she. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so this little bird, super cute. All right. So we're going to leave it like that for now. And under the face, I'm going to do a little shading, and then we'll add some hairs there. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the wings. I'm going to put my brush on the wing and then pull out over the brown. Now you're leaving space between the hairs so the brown behind the bird still shows, but you're giving him some little hairs. And then down here you could come down, you could flip some up a little, they could go in different directions. Okay. And I'm not making those strokes obvious on the top of the wing. Okay, I'm leaving those colors kind of blended in. I see a little bit of extra brown right here, so I'm going to, all right, there we go. Okay, super cute. So we're going to do this side. And I'm going to turn this sideways now so I can get at it from this other direction. And again, I'm going to tip the hairs pointing down. So we're going to go here and we're just going to pull out. I just keep loading in a little bit more of that thinned paint. And if you make the white strong enough, solid enough, so that it actually shows over that brown burnt umber shading that we put in, you'll see those little hairs, but they're going to be kind of subtle. And remember, as the white dries, it's going to fade in a little bit into the background. So for the bottom of the wing, let's go this way. And again, you could do some in the other direction. All right, so now he looks a little bit feathery, like little baby bird down. All right, and we're going to do the same on the belly, where the belly comes out onto the wings. So here we go. Oops. Okay, so here on the belly, I want to pull some hairs out, but I don't want to cover up that blue shading that we put in. I just want the hairs to come out on it. So little tiny brush strokes coming down. Okay, on the right side, same thing. I'm going to start having some personality. Okay, again, this is little baby bird down, so don't make it too thick. If you have any that are a little thicker than you want, you can go in and kind of soften them. All right, he is super cute. The beak is pretty dry, so I'm going to grab that larger round brush and I'm going to go and put a little bit more yellow on it. I'll let that dry and set up. So now for me to take care of these splotches that I made with splashed paint, I'm going to take my paper towel over my finger again and get some of that Unbleached Titanium and just come in and pounce over those dots. And I'm going to have to add probably a little bit of burnt umber and smush that in, blend it in to take care of those dots. So if your paint is not completely dry and water splashes on your canvas, it's going to create a bald spot, just like when you brush. If you brush over paint that's not dry, you create a bald spot. And sometimes they can be a little tricky to get covered. Okay, so that's covered. That's good. And then I'm going to take a little Unbleached Titanium here and pounce that spot. Now as this dries, if I put the blow dryer on it, I'll be able to come in and tap over that some more without disrupting the base coat that's underneath. So as you can see, there's a little bald spot there, so it does need to dry. Okay, I'm going to just take 1 second to blow dry that, and then we can move on. Awesome. All right. I love this little baby bird. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to do a little shading under the head. It's going to be extremely light, okay, extremely soft. And then we'll put some hairs down here when it's dry. So I'm going to take my round brush, my 6, and I'm going to take the tiniest bit of burnt umber. And I'm just going to blend it a little bit. And with the point toward the head of the bird, I'm going to lay in the slightest burnt umber color. Now it's important that the color on your brush is toward the head, on the tummy, and the rest of the brush is clean, so that you get a slight blend there. Now while you're at that, if you like that, you can come in and put just a tiny little bit here also. I'm gonna rinse my brush. I don't really want to cover my hairs. Just want to add a little bit of it, like antique look there. Okay, that's cute. Now that I dried that, let's go ahead and work on that beak just a tad. I want to put some orange, so I'm going to grab a little bit of my orange color. And down that left side of the beak, I'm going to go ahead, that's a lot of paint, and put in my orange. And you know, I think I'm going to grab a tiny bit of the Quinacridone Magenta and mix it with the orange, and I'm going to come in and place that down at that lower left side of the beak. I'm going to let that dry. I need to clean up where I went out of the lines a little bit here. I think I need another paper towel because I'm not absorbing my drips very well. Let me grab another one. Okay, I'm going to get a softer paper towel and get rid of those drips from my jar. Okay. Now I also want to add a little burnt umber to the beak, but I need to let that dry. So while the bird is setting up and drying a little bit, we're going to talk about the flowers underneath. So typically, I mean, I love, love, love to do freehand flowers. If you're used to that, also you can just freehand and have fun. If you aren't 100% sure, you're going to want to draw some circles for the centers. So my flower on the left is actually, the petals actually come up into the wing. I'm going to draw a circle for the center right around here. And then I'm going to do another one a little higher and through here. A little lower, maybe tipped that way. And then I'm going to do one here and here. And we'll see how that develops. We might end up wanting to move. I think I want this one out a little bit further. We'll see how it works as we develop this design. Okay. So when I do flowers, I try not to paint these kind of flowers. I try not to paint inside the center right away. And what I'm going to do is take my brush that's a little bit worn. This is number 10 round. And I'm going to wet it, but sometimes it's fun to use these dry also. So if you pinch it a little, you get kind of a flattened, like a platypus bill. I'm going to zoom this camera back out a little. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is take this brush and I'm going to dip it in the Quinacridone Magenta and blend it on my palette a little bit. Let me get the palette up a little higher for you. Okay, I'm going to blend it. And I'm going to start with this flower. I'm going to put the brush down, press, pull, and lift as I get toward the center. I'm going to need a lot more paint. Dip it in the magenta and turn this. And I'm going to get it into the wing, press, pull, lift, press, pull, lift. More paint. And I like to keep turning it around. I like to pull toward the center, and by having the tip of the brush outside, I get that rounded look. So press, pull, lift, press, pull, lift. Now this is just solid Quinacridone Magenta. You could tip it in some white right now, but for this layer, I've decided to go ahead and leave it darker. Okay, so now this center I definitely don't want here. I want it a little further up. We're going to wait on those little baby flowers for now. Okay, so if you're envisioning that the middle flower is going to be on top of that flower, leave it alone for now. We'll come over here and I'm going to grab some more Quinacridone Magenta and I'm going to create my flower. Wet my brush a little, grab some more color. The closer the petals, the more different the look of the flower. So you can put them close together like this or more more separated like the first one. Just have fun with it. And I also like to have sometimes some shorter, some longer. Just going to get in my magenta. Bam, bam. Okay, so I've kind of obliterated that middle flower, and that's okay. I need to squirt out some more quinacridone. Okay, so let's do this. While that's drying, or a little bit, we're going to come out and we're going to do a couple of strokes out here. Okay. Now, up here, we'll make those flowers with the smaller round brush. I'm just going to throw a couple little petals out there. Okay. Now, something else that's really, really pretty that happened here, if you grab a little bit of that bright orange with your magenta, see how the colors blend? So just kind of have fun with that. All right. I am going to put a little flower here, but I'm going to finish the background flowers first. So while those are setting up, they're already setting up pretty nicely. So I'm going to take some more magenta on my brush. There's a little bit of orange in there. That's up to you. I'm going to tip it in some white like this. Touch it on my palette. And I'm going to come in and put petals on top. So what I'm going to do is use a lot more white now. So I'm just tipping my brush into the white, and it still has a lot of magenta in it. And some are going to be longer than others, and I'm just going to create another layer there. Same thing on this one. I'm just going to come in with white on the tip of that brush and create another layer that's on top. All right, super cute. Out up in here, I'm going to use the smaller round brush to create a flower that just has a few petals. So I'm going to get the magenta on it, and I'm going to tip it in some white, and I'm just going to come in and make, oops, that one's had a lot of paint on it. Okay. So that looks a little messy right now, and once we get our centers in, it's all going to come together. Okay, so I'm going to add more white to this one on the left. I'm just going to go right over that while it's wet. I'm tipping the brush. By tipping, I mean I'm just dipping the tip of the bristles into the white. Press, pull, lift, press, pull, lift. All right. I do want another flower here in the middle. I did create these a little bit close. You could separate them more than that if you'd like. But I'm going to let these dry a little so I can create my other flower without messing up these petals that I have here, because I really like them. All right. So now I'm going to take that larger round brush again. Oh, my water is a luscious color. Look at that. Reminds me of an Easter egg. Okay, so we're going to do some greens. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this slightly so you can see more of my palette. Excuse my arm there. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take some of the darker green, a little bit of the brighter, and I'm going to tip the brush in some of that lighter green, and I'm going to come in and just start making some random leaves out there. So I'm going to press, pull, lift, and actually you kind of have to do it quickly. If you go slow, you're going to have a harder time making that stroke. Okay, so I'm just going to come in, and it's okay if a little magenta gets in your greens. Don't worry about that. And then I want to put some under the flowers also. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my small flat brush, okay, wet it in the water, touch it on my paper towel, and I'm going to grab some of my darker green, and I'm going to add just a little bit of burnt umber to that green. It makes such a luscious green. And out here I'm going to press, pull, lift, and my brush is a little too wet. And I'm just going to make some leaves that come up and out. Okay, same thing over here. And I just kind of go with what looks good to me, and I usually like to make some clusters of 3, but individual leaves are good also. All right, and I'm not really looking for symmetry here either. Okay, I want it to have some interest, so we might have a random leaf here or there. All right. And I really enjoy this light olive green. So with my dirty brush, I'm going to grab some more of that, and I'm just going to come in and make some little leaves with that here and there. You can also use these flat brushes up on their side and press and pull and get long leaves like that. So I'll do another tutorial with just different brush strokes like that. Okay, I want to put a couple of leaves up here off this flower that are going to end up on our little bird. Okay, I don't want to cover up all his feathery beauty. Okay, while those are drying, I'm going to shade the rest of the beak. I'm going to dip my brush, the corner of my, there's some green in there, corner of my tiny brush, my tiny flat, blend it on my palette. And with my brown toward the top right of that beak, I'm going to come in and put a little color. Now you can also use your round brush for that. Let me show you. You can grab some burnt umber. Put it on the edge and then slightly blend it. Let's tip this little guy sideways and come in here and put a little bit at the bottom. I'm using just tiny bits of paint. All right, rinse that brush. Okay, now we need to get some hairs on the bottom of that head. So we're going to go back to our small round brush, which I dropped on the floor. So bear with me while I grab that. Okay. So let's get some white. If you have to water it down a little, go ahead and water it down. And then down here, as we were bringing the hairs down this way on the face, we're going to go ahead and just create a few more hairs. Now we don't want them to look like a hairy, scary monster, so we want to blend some of that. I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to come on over here, create some more feathery look. And then I want to take my clean brush and come in and just kind of soften on the face a little bit. All right, now you can grab a little bit of blue also and mix it with some white. and come in, just kind of soften that a little bit, because we don't want it to look super hairy. We just want to create a little bit of baby bird down there. Okay, so don't let that get too hairy. If it does, grab a little bit of blue, come in and add a little bit of blue to it and kind of swirl it. Okay. I'm going to take my larger brush and just kind of soften that. Make a few hairs with the thicker brush. Now, depending on how comfortable you are with brushes, you may want to go to your bigger brush for that, or your small one. There's no right or wrong. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a little bit. Okay. While that's drying, I'm going to create that third flower here. I'm going to use the same brush. I'm going to leave it more in a point. I'm not going to flatten it out very much. And right in through here, I'm going to create another flower. All right, so I'm going to grab some magenta, grab a little white, kind of blend it on my palette, and right in through here, I'm just going to press and lift. And I'm just going to leave this flower a little bit brighter so it will help pop it to the front of the other two flowers, okay? Just grabbing more white, press, pull, lift, press, pull, lift, press, pull, lift. Okay, so I like that. While it's in that direction, I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm just going to add some green below that flower. So I'm going to grab a couple of my different greens on the brush, blend them on my palette, and just kind of come in and make some little leaves there. And now I'm going to turn it this way and decide what else I want to see there. Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to zoom this back out for you. Okay, perfect. Okay. So now we want to make the insides, the centers of the flowers also. So I'm going to put my brush in the water, and I'm going to go back to my trusty paper towel. And I'm going to get my index finger in there, and what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to dip in some of that orange, and I'm going to come onto the flower, and I'm just going to lightly bounce up and down with the orange. And you do have to turn your palette around, okay, so that you can come at it from the inside with your finger pointing out. That's just getting you a base coat of the color that's going to be in the center. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and do it here and a little bit here. Okay. While that's still wet, I'm going to dip into my Unbleached Titanium, tap it on my palette, and I'm going to get some in at the top of these centers. Okay, maybe a little here. What I'm doing is I'm adding some texture. Okay. Then you can actually dip in straight white after also. But for now, we're going to leave that like that. All right. I'm going to now take my my liner brush, my small, And I'm going to put some water on my palette near my green paint. Make a watered down version of it. And I'm going to come in and create the stems. And I like to just crisscross my stems and just leave them very, very light. And I don't overthink like where they would be growing from or anything. I just have fun connecting them to other petals or leaves. Just have fun with that. This is whimsy. So really, it's whatever you want. I'm not thinking about a light source or anything. I'm just painting, playing, and having fun with this. Now, not every leaf necessarily has to have a stem, but I've found most of my students do like to add stems to their leaves. But if you put some out there, don't feel like they have to. A lot of bouquets that I paint, I just leave leaves out there just as an effect. Okay, so that's looking cute. There are some areas where I want to add some leaves, so I'm going to get that flat brush again. Now you could use rounded leaves or square leaves with a flat brush. It's whatever you like. I'm just going to play. I have a lot of green on my palette and I want to use it. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to add some leaves here and there. And the brightness is really going to come in when we finish those centers. All right, I'm going to put a stem there. Okay. I think I want to do a couple more up there. All right. While they're drying, I'm going to grab that paper towel. I'm going to dip back in some orange and back in a little magenta and pounce it on my paper towel. And I'm going to have to pinch this pretty small. And let's see, what I want to do, get a little bit of that down in the centers, especially if you have any pencil lines showing. Get a little bit of that magenta in there. Got a little piece of dried paint there. All right, cute, cute. Okay, we want to give our bird a little bit of cheek color. So I'm going to take just a little bit of magenta and a little bit of white on my palette. And I'm going to come in, and this cheek would be up a little bit higher. Just going to pat in some cheek and another one over here. And I want it much softer than that and a little bit peachy. So I'm going to take a little orange, some orange in there too. And then I have a dry paper towel and I'm just going to come in and lightly tap that. Rinse my brush, come in with a clean brush, just soften any edges. It's just extremely subtle. If you add color, do it in little tiny, tiny bits. I've got a little bit of water there. I'm kind of letting them soften. Grab a little bit of white. And make it to your liking as far as how big they are. You don't even have to put cheeks on at all if you don't like that. Take some white. I need a little bit more. And of course, my palette is getting pretty messy. Softening them with a little bit of white. And now I just need to let that dry. Okay. While that's drying, I'm going to come around the flower. And I'm going to take the round brush that I used for the flowers. And I'm just going to use the tip. And I'm going to dip in some white. Again, this is a little bit of an older brush. So what I'm going to do is come in so the bristles are a little bit split. Need more white. Dip in your white, pounce it on your paper towel, and then come in and around your center of your flower, you're going to come in and add some white. There we go. Now, if your brush is too wide for this, you can use your smaller flat, or if you have another favorite brush that you usually do like a stippling motion with, feel free to grab that. I need a little more paint on my brush because my orange is pretty thick. There we go. And up on the ones that are up at the top, I'm going to put a little bit at the top of that center. So those kind of look like they've lost a few petals. All right. Now I'm going to take my pencil tip and I'm going to dip in white paint, and I'm going to go ahead and add white dots. And I'm going to let some of them spill out onto the petals. Just unevenly. Don't try to be symmetrical or perfect because it's much more interesting if you just dance them in and out and just let it happen. Don't try to be perfect. And this brings a lot of brightness in. I think adds a little bit of interest. Black also looks really nice used like this, so you know, have fun, experiment. Okay, it's just a few more steps that we need to do. Again, on these, don't be afraid to let some spill out onto your petals, just randomly here and there. Maybe on one you might even have a few little bits of pollen that came down lower. You can use a stylus or a tiny brush for this too, but I figured you all have a pencil because you drew the design, so I'm going to use a pencil to make it easier for you from a supply aspect. Alright, yay, she's so cute. Alright, now I'm going to wipe the tip of this pencil, and it's fine, it will still work. What I want to do is get her little eyes in, flowers on the head, and then shade under the flowers with some more burnt umber. So we're going to use that tiny, tiny brush, and I did not mention Mars Black. I forgot about the Mars Black. So you're going to need the tiniest drop of black. And again, water it down a little bit. And up here over the cheek near the beak, look like there's a little hair sticking out on this beautiful brush. I'm going to try to make it work. So right in through here, right above the beak, out to the right, I'm going to come in and make like a little hill. And I'm going to go 1, 2. Let me zoom in for the next lid. Turn it sideways. And I'm going to put the other eye there, but I see the cheek is wet. So let's get that dried for a second so the black doesn't run. Okay, that should do it. And right around the same spot, right here, I'm going to come in and create another one. Let's turn that right side up. Okay, that's cute. So her head is tipped. So I'm going to end up moving the top of her head to right here. And right about here is where I want to make some flowers. So I'm going to take that number 6 round and we're going to create some little flowers right there. I'm going to take some magenta. And on a much smaller scale, I'm going to press and pull, and I'm going to create this little flower here. I'm not worried about perfection. I'm going to come and get some green. And, well, yeah, so let's get the green. Always make sure you don't have water on the ferrule, on the metal part of your brush, because it will drip down and cause you some problems. So I'm just going to come in and create some little leaves. And then put a center in there. So again, I'm going to use some orange. Tap, tap, tap. I'm going to grab a little bit of the yellow. Just kind of put a center there. Now I'm going to, I think I'll add a couple more little tiny petals. So I'm going to go out here and just put a couple. All right, I don't want to overdo it. Put it down. So we need some little tiny stems. And again, I'm going to water some green down. And using my liner brush, I'm just going to come in and just connect those leaves, with stems. Need the darker green to show up. There we go. And you can draw a couple little tendrils coming out if you want. Okay, so the only thing that we need to correct then is if you have larger tufts of hair over here, you can take a little bit of burnt umber and just come in, kind of shade in behind them. All right. Now, the one thing that's going to ground this nest and the bird is a little bit of shading. Okay, so we're going to do that next. And the other thing is to take a look and see if any of your leaves need some stems or some attention. And you can just kind of go around your canvas and take care of that also. But I want to show you how I'm going to add a little bit of that burnt umber. Now, honestly, if you have your large brush, I really find that that's easier. Even though it's so big, you're only going to put paint on one end of it, one side of it. Okay, I'm going to zoom out to the whole effect again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some burnt umber, and I'm not sure if you'll end up seeing all of this palette in the video, but what I'm going to do is blend back and forth on my palette. So I have burnt umber on one end, but the other end of the brush is essentially clean. And I want to come and put the burnt umber up against my flowers and just kind of quickly go in and put some shading under them. Now I think as you add that and then around the side, you're going to see that it helps your flowers pop up off of that canvas. So if you look at this side versus this side, you'll be able to tell if that's something that you want to do. That magenta's a little wet there, so I have to be careful. I'll have to come back in there when that magenta's dry. When I stroked that petal, it got really thick there. So I'm just going to come in and add this here and there. Okay, and I like that much better, so I'm going to go ahead, keep grabbing just a little burnt umber, again, blend it on your palette, and then come in and just put it up against your flowers and create a shadow beneath them. Keep doing that. Okay, to make it easier for my hand, I'm going to turn this on its side. I'm going to rinse this brush. Grab some more burnt umber, do the blending. I'm going to touch my brush on my paper towel so it's not too wet. And I'm going to come in and go above the design onto the bird a little bit. We don't want to make him dark down there, but having a shadow is good. And come ahead and go all around this design. I want to put it here also. Okay, now here on the bird, I don't want it super dark, so I'm just going to go over it a couple times with the clean brush and just kind of soften that shading a little bit. There, now let's turn it around and take a look. Anywhere that you see you want to put some shadowing in, go ahead and just add a little bit of that burnt umber in there. Okay. Right in through here, there's a little bit of a space between the bird and the flowers. There's like empty background in here that I'm not particularly fond of. So I'm going to go ahead and dry it and throw a couple little leaves there, I think. And other than that, we just have to splatter this product. So let me dry it. Okay. All right, I'm just taking a look at it to see if there's anything else I want to change. So right in through here, I'm not happy with that space in there, so I'm going to grab some of my dark green with a little burnt umber and make that luscious green that I love. And right in through here, I'm just going to make a couple leaves, but it needs some of the olive green, so I'm going to grab a little white and some of the olive and kind of stroke back over that, I think. There. And now I'm going to do one here and here. So you know, you can just keep going, like I say in every tutorial. You can just go and go. But I recommend walking away from it a little bit too and just seeing how you feel about it. Sometimes just walking away from something, you have a whole different perspective when you come back and see it there. So I'm adding some brighter, some white. And you can do that. You can come back and add a little bit lighter color here and there like that. If you want to pop some of those leaves, you can add a little bit. Again, this is whimsy. I'm just having fun, not looking for a particular light source or anything like that. Okay, it's super cute. Like I say, you can keep adding. So I'm going to finish this though. What I want to do is come in. My cheeks got a little high, especially on this side. I tilted the head a little more than I had anticipated that I would. So I'm probably going to just come back in as this dries and add just a little more white up there so I won't have cheeks up over the eyes. You could draw your eyes lightly with pencil to ensure that you don't do that. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is just splatter this very lightly. So I'm going to use my number 10 round brush. And I'm going to put some water on my palette, add a little bit of burnt umber to the water. And test that out. It's a little wet, touch it on my towel. Okay, so here goes nothing. I'm going to splatter this background. Now I don't want splatter all over the bird, so you could, if you wanted to do a complete background first and then put your bird on top, you could do it that way. But what I'm going to do is try to avoid the bird, and then I'll just clean off whatever gets on it that I don't want. So I'm just tapping, tapping, tapping. The trick is the way I do it, I usually need another hand, and that's where it's going to end up on the bird. So I'm going to get it down here in the flowers. I'm going to try not to get it all over my little bird. Again, this is optional. Usually people either love it or they don't. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take a clean brush and come in and just take the ones that got on the bird that I don't want off. And actually, if you just blend it with a clean brush, you'll get a tiny bit of burnt umber sort of glaze to your bird. And I actually left that intentionally on my original. Okay, so there we go. Clean up any splatters that you're not happy with. Get rid of them now while they're wet. You can go in and just kind of soften them into your background. So take a look around, see which ones you might want to get rid of. And that is it. That's our little bluebird. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today, and have a wonderful day.